We work hard as physicians to take care of the health and well-being of our patients. But when it comes to our money, do we have the same condition of care? Probably not. Let's change that together. Welcome to the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast, where we'll fight and advocate for your financial literacy. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Liu. Thanks for being here. Let's jump into the show. Before we begin today's episode, let's hear from this week's sponsor.
Hi, I'm Dr. Erin Wiseman, and I'm here today to talk about Physician Coaching Alliance, otherwise known as PCA. This is a space dedicated to providing stellar coaching for our colleagues so you can do your best work in the world. We believe that in order to change the culture of healthcare as we know it today, all physicians and others working in healthcare need access to coaching. So we can help you find a coach, become a coach, or join our community of coaches to strengthen the work that you're doing. One value that I want to mention that we share in PCA is community over competition, because gone are the days that we see each other as enemy. Instead, we believe working together is the key to success of the individual and the whole. So if you're coaching curious or a coach yourself, come on over to PCA. We'd love to see you there.
So welcome everybody to this week's episode for the Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And as you know, we have 4 core tenets that we espouse for the podcast. So the first is financial freedom. Second is location freedom, time freedom, and emotional freedom. And today's guests, we have 2 very special guests, a couple powerhouse host and founder of the podcast BS Free MD. We have Dr. Tim and Dr. May from Eugene, Oregon, and they have a fantastic podcast, great platform where they expose the BS in the medical profession, and they bring on some very interesting guests that help to show the viewers behind the scenes. So without ado, we'll introduce Dr. Tim and May, and we'll let them tell their story. Dr. Tim and May, welcome.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks so much. We're excited to be here. This is super fun.
Yeah, we're all part of this group called the Doctors Podcast Network, and we're here to really help each other grow and really collaborate. So tell us about how the BS Free MD podcast got started, your background, your motivations. I'm always curious, like what was the superpower behind the creation?
I guess I'll start. So as what happened to everybody when COVID hit, it really turned everyone's lives upside down. And we both had done tons of reading. Like we were reading hours a day on this because, there was new information. It was like drinking out of a fire hose.
And tell them that we, like many other people, were scheduled to go on our nice annual vacation, literally April 1st. And then obviously we were going nowhere, and we volunteered to sort of furlough at home for, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, for the first 3 weeks.
And we were stuck at home with nothing else to do but stare at the TV like everybody else, watch the Johns Hopkins ticker drop, and research.
Yeah, so we had been practicing, rural family medicine and urgent care for, about just about 30 years. And, I'd seen a lot of different medicine, made a lot of really powerful connections in our community as far as patients. It felt like I delivered half of the 2 towns that I worked in. And patients were just like, pinging us and reaching out in every way, old patients, old friends, all this, like, what's the deal with this COVID? What's going to happen? Is everyone going to die? And so we just started reading. We felt it was really our responsibility to read as much as we could and try to decipher what was going on. So we started Facebook live streams, and they kind of blew us away. Like we'd have almost 200 people live for these live streams, and then, get 5 or 10,000 views after. And we're like,
basically, I was like, I'm getting tired of answering all these questions. Let's just do live stream and let them like ask questions live, and then they can watch it back. So we don't have to do this like 100 times during the week.
And so we're like, okay, maybe we can move this into the podcast world. I'd always felt that, if I had any job I could just pick and it could replace my income, I would, it'd maybe be radio. I used to listen to tons of podcasts and talk radio and so forth over the years. And I just love that format.
You kind of got the radio voice.
Yeah, kind of. I need to
Yeah.
I need to start smoking cigarettes though to get the FM, the
But
little gravel.
the other part that you didn't say too is that both of us being physicians, dual physicians, I mean, our poor kids. So we are always like talking shop at home all the time and talking about things that we're doing at work, whether it's the right thing, discussing new therapies, things that we're having to do, and just like analyzing it, critiquing it. And finally, we're like, why don't we just share this? This would be like, people would eat this up. And then after having done the live stream, they really liked how we feed off each other and how we play off each other. And we don't always agree on things either. And so they love, watching that interaction between us as well as our differing opinions. So it was almost, became a no brainer to, as time went on, we're like, yeah, this is going to work. And we should definitely push forward with the podcast thing. So how do we do that? And that then takes us to how we got to Doctor Podcast Network.
Yeah, and they were unbelievably supportive. We had been in, communicating with the founder before, just with regards to some financial things and his financial business, and then the network of people, the unbelievable physicians that we met through this, and then just the support. Like we were, I never had felt old until we started the
Oh, yeah.
podcasting, and we're everything's online and everything's a new app and a new format, and I was just like, my goodness, I know what it
Yeah, when they said
feels like to be old.
we'll ping you on Slack, and he's like, it just sounded like a bunch of like gook to me. What? Like, what is ping? What is Slack? But anyway, so we launched our podcast. Finally, we got figuring out what to do and had all help from DPN. We couldn't have done it without them. They're awesome for the newbies like us. And so our podcast launched in January. I think it was the 9th, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
So they drop every Thursdays, Apple, Spotify, iHeart, and I don't know if I missed one, but we have yeah, so we have been doing that every Thursday and have a blast. Now we're on episode 19 coming out this week.
Yeah.
And we basically are just putting things out there, different content. Like we've talked about the opioid crisis, the opioid epidemic, how we've known it through our careers, and how that swung, the pendulum has swung. We've interviewed the author of Fentanyl Inc.
Wow.
Yeah, which was amazing. We have started doing a series on the doctor as patient and what that's like to be a patient from the doctor's perspective. We've done some COVID talks, and
and then don't forget the best of every month,
yes, I knew
which
I
is
knew you'd get it.
which is Docktails with Cocktails, where we feature a spirit or cocktail. We're looking for alcohol sponsors, so anyone out there, and we have a couple drinks, and we share the lighter side of what's happened to us over 30 years of. I honestly thought that I've seen everything, and then something else happens at work, and I go, no, I guess
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that. It's like, yeah, we've seen it all, and then you're right. Something comes in. I'm like, okay, I guess we're naive to some new things here. But
Did we ever do the one where I was driving 150 miles an hour?
yes, we did that one. We did that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
did. We did stupid things we've done as doctors, stupid things we've been done as patients. We talked about when Tim worked with his appendix ruptured, and then he had to drive himself to the hospital, and how it ruined our weekend, and all my ortho and woes and things and illnesses and dumb things we've done trying to. He did his first marathon, and we share that story. It's super funny. We had just finished residency, or they were
Yeah.
second years. Anyway, we thought we were going to be heroes and stole all this IVs and bags of fluid, and it's on the lawn of the Parliament buildings in Victoria, BC. And we're like, we're going to hydrate you after. And so dumb, because all we did was fill his bladder, and he could barely like make it to the porta potty
Yeah, and
to
I was gonna
pee.
stand up, and I got like these wooden legs, and I'm like, this was completely stupid.
Anyway, we have fun doing those episodes because it's really pretty loose. It's not structured, and we just laugh at things we've done. So we have the COVID Idiot Awards. We make fun of some of the funny things everybody's seen in the name of COVID, that kind of stuff. So that's where we're at, and we're loving it.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. I love that story. And for the viewers and listeners, every podcast is different. It has its own vibe and it has its own ways of interaction. So that's the beauty of podcasting is the spontaneity, the authenticity, and just the stories and sharing. So I love that. And the pandemic was actually was best year for creatives because you had the internet, you had social media, and everybody's stuck at home. So people got creative, and and actually new businesses came about, and in a lot of industries like the work industry, and remote from home, and all of these are changing the world. So and it's awesome that you guys took something in crisis and you created something out of it. So and now it's a beautiful thing now. So
Well, like
um
is to push us over the edge and off the cliff to like just get doing it. Yeah, so you're right.
yeah. So tell us, like, in terms of creation, like what are some of your most the challenging in terms of launching a podcast, starting a podcast? For I know there's a lot of people interested. They have YouTube channels and Instagram, but now they want to venture out into the podcast format. We have Clubhouse now. So what are some of the tips and tricks, or and feel free to share that.
Well, honestly, for us, the um, the hardest part was the technical aspect.
Yeah.
Um, we're neither of us were super. I mean, I'm technically adept if it's fixing an old car, but as far as like the electronic technology and the interfaces, using Libsyn and Squadcast and all, and how all those have to work together, and then getting the approvals for all of the publishing sites like Apple and Spotify and so forth. And we found that the DPN was just indispensable in making that happen.
So
Content,
so we farmed that out. Like I would say for sure we'll record it, but then we just hire someone to mix the sound. And so when we record our interviews, which we use Squadcast, which actually we really like that a lot. It's worked really well, and I would definitely pitch that one for sure. But when you do the interview and it records it, then you have these two soundtracks. You have the guest and you have you. And the first time we went back to listen to that, the first interview we did, which was with Ben Westhoff, the author of Fentanyl Ilk, we hit play and all we could hear was us, and we're like, oh no, like we thought that we had like this hour and a half of this wonderful guy, and we blew it.
yeah, 2 full episodes, and we're like, oh.
So basically we didn't know these things, and we don't know how to mix them. I mean, it's probably not hard, but it's not our forte, so we have an audio guy that does that for us. So if that's not your thing, you can um farm it out, or I would say have hire someone else to do it. There's lots of people that do the audio, and a lot of people just do it themselves. I know that a Roadcaster is a really popular tool to use. A lot of people in our network use it. It makes it really easy. I would say another tip is have a really good quality microphone.
Uh-huh.
It,
Yeah.
that's easy to do, but it's totally worth it. And also just setting up your space. I put it actually on our Instagram. I posted it, and it's in the Instagram, what are they called? Not on the stories, on the favorites, or there's so I took I did a little video of our room and how we set up our office for really good sound. And that's really important. And so, just extra curtains hanging around. We hung them up and made like a little closet, pillows, blankets, ways to deaden sound, little things you can get on Amazon to put on the ceiling that absorbs. That is huge, and it's really easy. So that's really important, sound quality, because if people don't like the sound quality, I know that our son won't listen to it. So that's what we've been told. So sound quality, audio you can farm out. The other thing about the podcast is, right, you have to figure out how to get it up to the onto the whatever platforms you're going to use, and then you have to write a little description. um, I like writing, so it's not bad. I mean, it's pretty easy to just write a brief description. I don't know what you do, but I just write a few paragraphs and link things, and it's pretty easy to do.
It's been interesting because you know we complement each other so well. uh, I think just even in our dialogue, but even in what our strengths are. Like May's a writer, I'm not a writer, but I can talk continuously to the ad nauseum, as they would say. And so the content creation part from our perspective was never, at least so far, has not really been a huge challenge, because there's just always so many ideas, and we'll see something at work, or someone will ask us a question, do something about this, or And so that part has been the real joy, because I've wanted to do something creative for a long time. I felt kind of, stifled in corporate medicine from a creative perspective, and so this has just been a wonderful outlet to do that. And we said, look, sure, if it earns us money, if it allows us to build a business, that would be great, that would be the icing on the cake. But honestly, just the creative part of it has just been so freeing for us and liberating. You talk about that emotional freedom. That's been part of
Yeah.
it for sure.
Yeah. As far as actual content creation, and I don't know any tips on that, I would say that everybody's got something unique to say. And it took me even a long while to sort of figure it out. I'd be like, well, who wants to listen to this 50 something lady that does country medicine and she's an empty nester and, you know, she's family practice, but doesn't have any crazy, she's an academic, whatever. And then I'm like, well, gosh, when you think about like things in my life and what we've gone through, I mean, that in itself is unique. Plus, everybody's story is different and people have different interests. I mean, whether it's a medicine podcast, a financial podcast, you want to talk about, say, just migraines and or living with lupus or overcoming burnout, or I mean there's always more of that, or just supporting other people, or like Tim was said, if you are left-handed and do left-handed, you could do a whole show on cool left-handed stuff. I mean, so there's
Yeah.
definitely a niche for all kinds of stuff. And so figure out your niche, because that makes it more interesting. And then, is it just going to be you talking, or are you going to have guests on? Both. At first I thought, oh, we're doomed because it's just us talking and we need to have guests to make it more interesting. But, interviewing is a skill that is, I learned like, oh, learning to interview is a skill in itself. So I really appreciate people that have great podcasts and interview well. So if you're going to do that, learn up on some techniques.
Well, it's interesting because if you listen to Rogan, you don't ask very many questions. I mean, you let he's an expert at letting the guest carry the show,
Yeah.
and then he lights a joint.
There you go. So, yeah, that's I guess the first things that pop in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, it was very, I found that, the technical aspects and just learning is like, that was a skill in and of itself, social media and all the different platforms and just learning how to record. And you mentioned sound and video and lighting. So all of those, but it's a very valuable skill set for creators, and it's a very valuable way for your marketing, education, getting to your clients. So, all of those tips and resources that you mentioned, are all very valuable.
Absolutely.
In terms of guests, what's been some of the your challenges or tips and tricks in getting guests and getting them on the show and creating the vibe and the content?
Yeah, it's interesting because our vibe is looser, as you could probably tell, but we've had some really serious stuff. The series we did on the opioid epidemic, I'm actually really really proud of, because we started from kind of the medical part and how the medical system let essentially the country down, and then we
Yeah.
moved into the second wave with fentanyl, and we interviewed a family that we have known for decades who lost a son to the fentanyl um,
Oh.
epidemic. That was incredibly powerful. We just kind of opened. We said, look,
I think that a lot of people would, just look in your backyard, your neighbor, look where you're at locally first, as far as finding
yeah,
guests.
and then from there it was amazing because when we interviewed Ben Westhoff, who wrote Fentanyl Inc. I mean, this guy actually posed as a drug dealer and went to China and went to the actual
So
labs.
tell them sort of how we got that
and
guest.
and we got that connection because we had interviewed this family that were friends of ours who had this terrible tragedy, and
They read the book.
he read the book twice, the father of this deceased child, and he just reached out to Ben and he said,
They
hey,
just
this
wrote
is
them
what happened. I
directly.
wrote your
Yeah.
book, read your book twice, it's really good. You got to talk to my friends that are doctors, blah blah blah. And Ben's like, yeah, sure, I'm totally down for it.
Yeah. And then with Dr. McCullough, how did you get a hold of him?
So I actually, you talk about investing. I was on one of my COVID penny stocks. Somebody posted a video, and it was Peter McCullough testifying to the Texas State House, and he's been really passionate about how we've really been derelict as physicians in trying to treat patients early with COVID and just relying solely on the vaccines. And I was like, wow, here's somebody that's doing something different, but is really rational and has impeccable credentials with regards to his scholarship. So I just emailed him. I said, all you can say is no, right? I mean, if you don't ask, nothing happens. If you ask, who
Yeah.
knows what will happen. And I emailed him and said, hey, we do this podcast. It's called BS Free MD, Wife and Our Family Doctors. I was blown away by your testimony in Texas. And he's like, I'd be delighted. That's the text I get.
Oh, that's awesome.
Or email.
So we've been pretty
know?
bold about just asking people that were, we've reached out to someone else. Tim wanted to do a talk on a series on risk. Haven't heard back from some of these people, but like you say, you can always reach out and ask, because all that's going to happen is nothing. But if you don't, then
all that's going to happen is nothing for sure.
So there's that. I think then once you make a connection, there's always someone else that they might know or recommend. The Doctor Podcast Network itself has been valuable, obviously, for getting connections and names of people, because some people are better for some people's shows than others, or they'll go on multiple shows, or someone in our network will know someone, so that's helpful. The other thing is we have I just signed up, and it's this new I wish I could remember the name of it. It's Pod Match, I believe. Have you heard of it?
No, I have not. What is it?
It's a online site. It's kind of like a dating site for podcasters. You can go in there and you put whether you want to be a guest on someone's show, or you are looking you're a host and you're looking for people to come on as guests. So you can be both, and you fill in all your information, the name of your podcast and what it's about and what kind of guests you're looking for and the vibe and how you'd proceed, and they ask all kinds of questions, and you can put pictures, and then you can do the free version. It literally matches you. It scores you with someone, and I think you get 2 free matches per day. If you do the paid version, it's multiple, and you can search around in there. So that's pretty cool. And I do know that someone in our podcast network has found guests on there too. So there's these kinds of ways. I think
we got 3 guests out of the physician side gigs on Facebook.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
They heard that we're doing this, they'd listen, and then they reach out to you. They're like, hey, we really liked what you had to say. It was a really cool vibe. This is my story. And then you click on some of these and you're like, well, you're like 10 times better than me.
So yeah, that's the other place, is on Facebook with any of the physician groups have been in.
Physician groups on Facebook have been really pretty surprisingly good, actually.
Yeah.
I've, used Instagram as well, but it's almost more, I don't find it as well as good for connecting with people on a one-on-one conversation that you can do in the Facebook groups. So that's my bias. But that's kind of where we've been looking and where we've gotten people so far.
Yeah,
and then as far as problems, okay, well, so we have really bad internet where we live, and we've learned that we cannot record audio and video at the same time, because we wanted to do this and record it and possibly use it for our YouTube channel as well. But where we live is just basically like dial-up. If anybody even is old enough on here to know what dial-up is bad. So we fragged with our couple of our interviews to the point where like the system crashed, within the first 5 or 10 minutes, and we couldn't even use our phones. So you need to make sure you do have good internet and it can handle your audio and video capabilities. Most people are probably not rural like us and living on the edge of the grid, but we go to my dad's in town now, honestly, to do it, because it's bad.
We're going to start a fasting and prayer vigil for Starlink to get here as fast as possible. $99, so I'm waiting for that to show up.
So we've had problems like that, or people who have never used Squadcast and aren't sure how to turn off things, or mute things in the background, and you can hear their baby screaming, and it's just it's all fun. I don't get uptight about it, but it's just stuff like that.
Yeah, that's,
I'm sure you know.
Yeah, that's such invaluable advice. So what transition, I know you had some advice to the viewers of I know, because this is a podcast for finances, so if you want to share things not to do. I know you had some thoughts about that. So, and feel free to, let viewers know your thoughts and ideas.
Well, on the podcasting side of it, you're not going to get rich right away doing a podcast. You're not going to be Rogan. We got our first check for January. We got our first check in February, and it was 2 digits.
Yeah,
So-
but it's in 0 digits.
Yes.
Now,
So
as far as the finance thing, I think, from a physician perspective and a physician couple perspective,
Yeah.
I think the most important thing to not do is to not listen to your hype. So, everyone around us, I mean, we live in a smaller town, but we have people here that have run very successful businesses, especially in the logging industry. And even those folks who I'm sure their net worth is, an order of magnitude more than ours, are like, well, they can buy whatever they want because they're both doctors. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. Running a business is, that's been in business for 50 years is probably far more successful than anything I'm going to produce in, 5 years. And so, you the tremendous amount of sort of the delayed gratification you go through in medical training, and then we're like, okay, now we're rich. Well, no, now you're not. Now you've graduated residency and you're starting a job, and you actually have negative net worth, but you have decent cash flow, and and understanding those concepts and leveraging those to your advantage is critically important. And so we went through several years of I was more of I'd save up and buy something big. May was told she could never buy anything, and so it was just like,
as a kid, I had to save all my money to get through school, and so it's save, literally like 10 years or more of saving, and going through residency where you can't
I mean,
spend
there was
anything.
a point
So
before
then-
we had kids where we would be, I'd see all these like shoe boxes every time I came home.
Pottery Barn and Zappos, and there was no Amazon.
And I'm like-
Everything was showing up every day
well,
in the
if you're gonna
store.
buy that, then I'm gonna buy this. And then before you know it, you're like,
It was
what
a-
are we doing?
was a
Like,
competition.
This is ridiculous,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it was the whole problem with the delayed gratification, and now the volcano blows. For me, that was huge. So having that, someone starting out, even just knowing that and having a plan, and we didn't really have a plan. The only plan, back in our day, from what we were taught with our family from a different generation, was just to pay yourself, put some money away, pay yourself first with a 10% saving was the rule, and it will all work out. I mean, that was how what it was. Well, it's not quite that simple,
Yeah.
because we did that, and I thought, we'll put the 10% away, and we'll just do whatever we want with the rest, however we want it. And then when I'm 50, I'll just retire from medicine. I had this number in my head. Well, I'm now almost 55, and I'm still not retired because
now we're a lot closer.
we're doing really well now because we've really cleaned things up.
It's
But
also amazing.
but we didn't have a plan.
It's also amazing when you really plan how quickly you can turn the ship around.
Yes.
I mean, personal finance, especially for physicians, you can get yourself in enough trouble that you're turning an aircraft carrier. It's going to take a really long time. But really, if you really buckle down and plan, it's the plan that saves you.
Oh,
It's more like a speedboat turning. And, we really,
I think at one point, I mean, I'm going to be really honest without sharing numbers. I mean, we just had a lot of debt that we, could take care of if we had to, but it was just, we had loans, home loans, car loans. We were happy taking the kids places. It's like, yeah, we can afford to do this. We can get a line of credit because we were living fine. It wasn't like we were scraping by paycheck to paycheck. But then at one point I'm like, look at all this negative, like this debt. It was just like, ugh, it just felt dirty. And so then it really was like, okay, we got to make a plan. How can we make this right? It was just stop. You can do it, even though it looks like a huge mountain to overcome.
oh,
I would say all you have to do is say, okay, we're going to stop contributing to the negative. And then the B word, which I know a lot of people hate, the budget word, just like the diet word, is really not a true bad word. It is really just planning, and is actually, since we started that faithfully, freeing, because you can just see
Right.
where things are going. And Tim's right. You can turn the ship totally around really pretty quickly and go, oh my gosh, we're doing so well. But you need to have a a plan, and you need to not do the big bad things without a plan.
It was interesting. We were at a charity golf event, and they had Darren Clark was there, who was a professional golfer from Ireland actually, and he said, the difference between recreational golfers and pro golfers is recreational golfers play from the tee to the green, pros play from the green to the tee. And that really actually struck me, because when you think in anything in life and you think from a financial perspective, okay, if I want to retire at 45, if I want to retire at 55, if I want to retire at 70, those are different holes. But unless you know what retirement at X age means, you cannot plan correctly. You have to start with the end goal in mind. And we're like, okay, well, we'll save money, and then, we'll get to whatever age, and then we'll just have enough money. Well, if you don't know what that means, it affects how you take vacation. It affects how big of a house you have. It affects what other things spend disposable income on, and it affects how you invest. I mean, wildly. And so that one is that's
just being aware and having a plan. And I would say that we sort of had our head in the sand for that.
I mean, we were
for a long time.
We were doing the 401k stuff, and
yeah.
we did that mostly correct. We paid ourselves first. We did the greatest thing you can ever do from a financial perspective as a physician, which is not get divorced.
Oh yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, that's huge. Divorce. Yeah.
So right. we did those two things. We built probably too much house too soon, but then we stayed in it.
Yeah.
We didn't keep moving. And
this is the only house we've ever owned. So I know from hearing talks that is very, very, very rare.
Yeah.
We came out of residency and found our place we wanted to live. And this has been our forever house that we bought the property and added on. And we've been here has it been 28 years? Almost.
Yeah.
So I know that's very rare, but it's worked out okay. But not the house trap is another thing we see happening to people as well, as well as the car thing. I mean, everybody wants the nice car, and so
I like old collector cars, and they go up in value. So
yes, we do have that.
I don't mind driving a 12-year-old used car to work, because I'd rather put that into my toys that if I had to, I can liquidate and actually recoup.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well,
but I would say now, looking back, I mean, I can laugh and tell you more stories about all the dumb things I did, all the 0% interest credit cards that used to be available, and just keep rolling them from one to the next. But to have a plan and to do that, like Tim said, about kind of have an idea where you want to go and how do you get there? You got to work back. Like, what's it going to take to retire if you're 55 or 50? And do you want $1 million? Do you want 10 million? And so how do you get that and divvy it up and work back?
I prefer 10.
And find a financial planner, advisor, some place that you trust that has even good advice. Start with listening. What I did and what changed our lives was podcast, actually.
Yeah.
The second podcast I ever listened to is where I found, and I'm going to plug it because I love financial residency. And that changed my thinking. And I'm like, this all makes sense. Like, I've listened to some of the other very well-known financial people in the world, and I'm like, this sounds just cruel. What they tell people to do, like, you have to carry cash in my wallet and book a hotel. I'm like, cash.
You mean like Dave Ramsey?
Yeah. So find somebody though that you groove with, that makes sense to you, and follow the steps and come up with the plan.
Yeah.
Better than nothing. So
yeah, I love that. It's all I love the idea of plan and habits and discipline, saving. So you guys touched up on that, and it looks like you guys are you did doing well, and now you're sharing and giving that advice back. So I love that. So Dr. Tim and Dr. May, I really enjoyed having you on my podcast, and hope to have you on future episodes. And what is one last tip that you want to share to viewers before we conclude tonight?
Yeah, I think what the one thing I really appreciate about what you shared at the beginning was the emotional freedom, because a lot of times we don't give ourselves permission for that. And you still through the budgeting, through the discipline, through all that, you still got to have fun. Otherwise, what are you saving money for?
Yeah.
For me, that was big deal. I mean, I was always, that's why, our old email was fun docs, because, we'd go to the Columbia Gorge and windsurf every single weekend before we had kids, and, this kind of stuff. And for me, that's a critical piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, that's awesome. And how can viewers get in contact with you through your podcast or through your social media or email? Feel free to let viewers know.
So a couple of ways is our website is bsfreemd.com. You could go on there, and we actually have an email associated with, which is doc, D-O-C, at bsfreemd.com. They could email us. We're also on Facebook, BSFreeMD, and Instagram as well. But the easiest ways is the email and Facebook.
And then we're on all the major platforms, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, etc. Yeah, we have a great time. We'd love to share it with you.
Yeah, awesome. And to the viewers, all the resources mentioned will be in the show notes, as well as the contact information. So thanks so much for being on the show. Thanks for dropping all those golden nuggets of wisdom, and we look forward to collaborating in the future.
Outstanding. Thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
so much. It's been
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode. As we wrap up today, if you are coaching curious or a coach yourself, I encourage you to check out Physician Coaching Alliance at drpodcastnetwork.com/Physician Coaching Alliance. Until then, we'll see you next week. I'm excited that you made it for another episode. You are truly the best. If you've been following the show for a while, you know that my passion is to bring you the education you need to find your path to financial freedom. Please come back week after week for new content, new resources, and great guests. Until then, if you haven't already, please be sure to check out the website, www.drchrislewmdphd.com, for more support. I'll see you next week.